Tonight on The ReidOut.
Definitely believe this is not over. I do. I think he just said the quiet part out loud.
The he Vice President Harris refers to is, of course, Justice Clarence Thomas, who wants the court to take away more rights. It's yet another example of how the cruelty is the point for Republicans, as the human suffering from the court's decision is already becoming apparent. Also tonight, the January 6th committee's new surprise, new evidence requiring a special hearing tomorrow. But first, over the weekend, thousands of people took to the streets to protest the Supreme Court's draconian decision, sweeping away the rights of millions of Americans. A new poll shows that a majority of Americans oppose the ruling. Republicans know it's extremely unpopular, so they're now attempting to make the truly ludicrous claim that they are the party that cares about women. Compassionate Conservatism 2.0. Here is conservative columnist Peggy Noonan.
Look, you know what the Republican Party should do now? It should use this victory, if you see it that way, to change itself and become a party that helps women, change its reputation, become a party that helps women and children, becomes responsible.
Now, you know it's a bad idea when the entire panel cannot help but laugh out loud on live TV. Because that claim Republicans could possibly support women right now, it falls apart immediately. After South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said that she wants to help support mothers in her state, ABC's Martha Raddatz cited a study showing that the 14 states with the most restrictive abortion laws also have the worst maternal and child health outcomes, with South Dakota, of course, being one of those states. And here's how Noem responded.
What do you mean when you say these mothers will never be alone?
Well, I would say that the facts on the ground are that South Dakota is doing a lot to coordinate with nonprofits, with churches, and then also the state in a new way by launching this website and committing to in legislative session to support these mothers is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, that's right. All that the women in America need to feel supported by the government that now owns them is a website. And while they're hoping that they can get away with their fake support of women, they're also tripling down on their Roe victory. Noem also said that she would like to ban medication abortion, which will likely be the next big legal battle, with Attorney General Merrick Garland saying that the DOJ would fight any effort to restrict access to abortion pills. Garland also stressed that patients must be free to travel to seek care, as Republicans and anti-abortion groups have been brainstorming ways to criminalize traveling across state lines for abortion for months. But what Republicans really want is a nationwide abortion ban. And former Vice President Mike Pence is leading that charge. While Mitch McConnell said today, unlike what he said before, that, well, he didn't foresee a nationwide ban. Literally, no one believes that, and he said the opposite before. Also, a right-wing group is currently pushing for model legislation that would go beyond punishing abortion providers, calling for the use of RICO laws against anyone with any involvement with someone accessing an abortion, such as offering telehealth appointments or mailing or transporting abortion pills across state lines, or potentially even giving advice online about how to self-administer an abortion. And despite Republicans going out of their way to claim that this is not about punishing women, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation has already suggested that women who have abortions should be committed to mandatory psychiatric custody. Off to the psych ward they go. And once all of our abortion rights are taken away, birth control and same-sex marriage are next, as Justice Clarence Thomas was pretty clear about in his concurring opinion last week. So we should expect to hear many more Republican claims that they are really just here to support women. But voters need to listen to less of those meaningless platitudes and to more of what they're actually planning to do. With me now, Jason Johnson, professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University and host of the Slate podcast, A Word with Jason Johnson. Melissa Murray, NYU law professor and an MSNBC legal analyst, and Anthea Butler, chair of the Religious Studies program, the Religious Studies Department at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you all for being here. Jason, I found this really funny, watching the various Republicans go on the various Sunday shows to say, oh, no, we really love women. We will have a website for them. Meanwhile, in the real world, Politico talked to a bunch of their strategists, and one of them said the following: this is not a conversation we want to have. This is John Thomas, a Republican strategist who works on House campaigns across the country. We want to have a conversation about the economy. We want to have a conversation about Joe Biden, about pretty much anything else besides Roe. This is a losing issue for Republicans. He's right, correct?
It's a losing issue for Republicans. It's a winning issue for Democrats. If they actually use it, I can talk about this in a very, very practical way heading into the fall. You have an incoming school year this fall. You have people going off to college. You have students going back to high school. All of these things lead to increases in needs for prenatal care and health care and potentially abortions. Like, we could see additional waves of this problem, almost like we've seen with COVID, where it becomes all the more apparent as we head into Election Day. The issue is whether or not just can the Democrats message on this, but can they convince people they'll do anything? I mean, look, the Republicans, it's not just they've been saying they're going to do this for 40 years. Once Texas passed a bounty law last year, that was the sands in the hourglass. That's when the Democrats should have done something, and they haven't done anything. So you've got to go out and say, look, the Republicans are wrong about this, and we have a set plan, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, we have a set plan of what we can do going forward if you give us your votes, and that may be a way that the Democrats can really capitalize on what is basically a human rights tragedy that just occurred with an illegitimate and unelected court.
Right. I mean, Melissa, the court seemed to know and not care that they were acting against the public will, right? They are obviously religious zealots, and they've decided this is their religious belief system, and they're going to impose it. They just did another case today where they're like, oh, praying in school and making the kids in the classroom pray, perfectly fine, right? So we know where they're coming from. But, to make it very clear, 57% of people who were polled on this issue believe that the decision was politically motivated and not motivated by the law of the land. 56% have said that they're concerned that the decision could also jeopardize the rights to contraception, same-sex marriage, or same-sex relationships. And 51% say the decision will make them more likely to vote for a congressional candidate who would back a law that would restore the protections of Roe. So that is, in theory, as Jason said, good news for the Democrats. But my question is, I get a lot of people asking, yeah, but the Democrats have power now. Why aren't they doing anything? And to Jason's point, talk to me about sort of the parameters of potentially legally what the Justice Department could do and what the president could do. Because there's been a lot of talk about whether or not an executive order could impact this, whether or not the Department of Justice can enforce the ruling that they came out and said, no, it's legal to have these drugs. You can't make them illegal in your state. Where do we stand in terms of what these states are able to do with bans and what the Biden administration could do and the DOJ could legally do?
Well, there are two questions embedded in your question, Joy. So one is why does the Supreme Court insist on doing this, given that the majority of Americans disagree with this? And that's simply, if you watch the Real Housewives of Atlanta, this is a who gonna check me boo moment. Who is going to check the Supreme Court? Not Congress, which is gridlocked. Congress could take steps to strip the court of its jurisdiction. Congress, in tandem with the president, could take steps to expand the court. There aren't the votes to do that right now because the Democratic majority in the Senate is so tight. So that then turns to what are these two branches going to do independently? Obviously, there could be a federal effort to codify Roe's protections into statutory law, federal statute. That will not happen so long as there isn't a broader Democratic majority in the Senate. The president could take steps to pass an executive order to do this, either through his emergency powers, but that really falls on shaky grounds, which we saw in the Trump administration, which we saw earlier with those executive orders aimed at requiring certain workplaces to have vaccine and testing mandates under the OSHA statute. And I think the real question for this administration is, if they push on this question of executive power, do they not only lose at the Supreme Court eventually, but when they lose, they not only lose on this question of abortion, but the broader question of the administrative state and the government's ability to regulate through administrative agencies more broadly. So there's a lot at stake here. And I think a lot of this comes down to, something has to be done, a symbolic grand gesture, if you will. But in the end, we can't really rely on government to save us. We have to get out there, we have to vote, and we have to recognize that the Republicans have been disciplined on this. They've been voting. They were losing, and they still came out. When the court had David Souter and Anthony Kennedy and Sandra Day O'Connor, people who are wobbly on some of these core conservative issues, that didn't stop conservatives from coming out to vote. They knew they would eventually get what they wanted, and now they have.